I just finishing up my weeding here for my little corn patch, one of the dozen or so that I've got. And the idea is those weeds will suck dry the plants that you're trying to grow. This happens to be Indian corn, open pollinated corn that I save seed year to year. And there's a lot of uses for corn. Don't need to go into that, you know that. But this is just a little bit of freedom to do what you want, and the intelligence to know what to do with it, and a learning process. So I'll tell you this story, pretty simple story. I had on the candy truck, I had a black youth show up on my candy truck, 15 years ago, give or take. And a little bitty black kid, and he was new to town here, and it didn't help that his daddy was a cop, and for making friends he had a hard time seeming to find anybody. So he gravitated over to my candy truck. I treated him nice, and if he was out of money I'd give him treats and stuff like that, and treated him like a human being, like anybody would want to be treated. With that in mind, one day he come walking up to my candy truck, and he said, "Mr. Bill," he said, "have you ever said the N word?" Of course, he used the word. And I said, "Most definitely, I sure did." And his eyes got big, and he said, "You said the N word?" And I said, "Sure. When I was a kid, at the orphanage, we'd hear the big kids say it, so we said it. And it wasn't any different than the naughty words that we weren't supposed to say, cuss words, if you will. It was just another big people word that if you said it as a kid, it meant that you were bigger or maybe more important by putting down somebody else." And so, with that in mind, I used that word. And when I got to adopted and on a farm family, a number of the relatives would use some pretty heavy language when they spoke of the black man or the Japanese. For example, I had two uncles. One was wounded by the Japanese machine gun, and then another uncle had two ships shot out from under him, out in the middle of the Pacific. And so they never did say the word Japanese when they were speaking of those people. And as far as the blacks, it was pretty easy to condemn them because there were none around. We didn't know any. And yet the TV showed that there were agitators down south trying to cause trouble all the time, back in the 1950s. And so it was easy to use that N-word. Of course, I grew up, and I saw for myself that that's not the correct word to use. And just as the F word is not the correct word to use. And there are a lot of other negative words that should never be used by anybody, by any color, for any reason. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But be that as it may, that kid was so impressed with me for telling the truth that I'd used the N-word, and we became even stronger bond of friends throughout our lives. A few years later, well, he got in a motorcycle accident. He wouldn't go to the emergency room, so his girlfriend brought him over to the candy truck and asked Mr. Bill if I could talk him into going to the emergency room. Well, he was standing there not in good shape, not counting he was spitting up some blood. And I said, "Well, you have a choice. You're either a dead man or a live man. Today you get to have the freedom to choose." And I said, "I'll pay for the emergency room. I don't have a lot of money, but I could probably come up with $500. That'd get your foot in the door anyway." He said, "No, he didn't need it." He said, "I think maybe I should go." And because I pushed him into going right then, the doctor said it wouldn't have been too much longer, he'd have bled to death internally. So I guess it saved his life. But that is McCook's Mr. Bill and the N-word story. And I hope you don't have to use that or any of the disgusting words that this earth has invented. Rate this film.